welcome back to another episode on the Beauty Industry Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Kennedy, and today I'm having a really exciting conversation around the legal side, regulations, and understanding how you can protect yourself and your business in the beauty services industry moving forward. Today I'm interviewing JadeStart, who are an award-winning international business coaches exclusively for the beauty industry. So they help beauty businesses grow to be multiple 6 and 7 figures without burning out. Founded in 2015, JadeStart is owned and operated by a husband and wife team, Jade and Aaron Spehr, and has worked with over 1,000 beauty businesses across 15 countries around the world, helping them generate tens of millions of dollars of additional revenue through their one-on-one and online group coaching programs. Today, I'm getting to talk to the beautiful Jade, who is a qualified lawyer, an undergraduate accountant, and has worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers as a manager, providing business coaching to 7- and 8-figure businesses and turning distressed businesses around. Welcome to the show, Jade.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to unpack this topic today.
How have you been feeling in the lead up? Have you had any ideas or inspirations of things you want to talk about?
Yeah. I reached out to our member base as well, and I've had a few people submit some questions that they want us to chat about, which are perfectly aligned with the questions you sent through around, insurance, industry regulations and things like that. So there's so much practical information we're going to unpack today. I've been feeling good.
I'm excited. I think that there's not enough information available online or accessible to people without paying a hefty price tag or even knowing the right people to ask and getting that credible information. So having someone like yourself is going to be really valuable. And I know that even though it may sound unsexy, law and regulation, you are going to want to tune in to the whole of this episode and maybe listen to it and write some notes down a second time.
Yeah, so we'll try and suitify it, like suits. We'll try and make it sexy.
I'm here for it. So, Jay, before we dive into some of the topics that we've been asked to cover, would you mind sharing a little bit about your background, how you found the beauty industry and where you started, how you got to where you are?
Yeah, for sure. So I didn't have a traditional route into the industry like most people. I left school at the end of year 10 because my stepmom had a stroke, and we had two young siblings that were under 3 at the time. And so Dad asked me to go move in with my grandparents just to help alleviate around the house. And so I moved in with them at 15, and I had to get a full-time job at the time. So I ended up working for Woolworths and worked my way up through management. By the time I hit 24, 25, I call it a quarter-life crisis because most people go through a shift in their career at 24, 25, and I did too. I was no exception, and I decided that it wasn't stimulating or challenging enough for me, and so I wanted something more. I was lucky enough to be provided an opportunity as a legal assistant for a property developer they were quite a large property development firm, and they owned a portfolio of properties from Port Douglas in Queensland all the way down to the iconic Soul building on the Gold Coast. And so I joined their team doing in-house legal and in-house property management for their commercial and residential properties. The company went into receivership not long after I joined, about a year after I joined. But during that time, I already knew I wanted to become a lawyer after having exposure to that space. I needed to go back and finish my studies because I left school at the end of year 10. So I had to go back and do an advanced diploma in business when I was 25. So it was 10 years after I left school, and got my OP1, got admitted into Bond University, and I was determined to graduate by the time I was 30. So when the company I was working for went into receivership, that was my first real exposure into what the impacts of liquidation, insolvency, bankruptcy, all that kind of stuff, how it really impacts not only businesses, their staff, but also communities and the families of people who are impacted as well. And so I ended up staying and working underneath PwC on the Soul project on the Gold Coast for a number of years. I completed the project with the team. I was the last employee left after we sold all the residential properties and leased out all the commercial properties. We sold the letting rights, which are the hotel rights. We sold the commercial precinct, and once all of that project was finished, then it was time to move on. So PwC hired me. I joined their insolvency team as an insolvency specialist and worked on some really large, high-profile insolvency cases, as well as some more lower, non-known private insolvency cases, and worked on turning businesses around or winding them up. After being in that space for about 9 years, it's a really negative space to be in. I remember one day I showed up to work and I was told we had to make 500 people redundant because the company that got appointed couldn't afford to keep the employees. And having to personally make all those phone calls was really quite difficult. And so I thought, I'm a really positive, upbeat person. How can I help businesses stay out of this space? So I decided to switch in my corporate career and focus on scaling multi-million and billion-dollar businesses, and did that. I developed coaching and consulting programs that got rolled out to franchise groups, and then I would go into each of the businesses in that franchise group and deliver those programs and lift the performance of the whole network, and then report back to head office. So that was a really fun and exciting time. That was my corporate career. Alongside my corporate career, I also had JadeStart. So I launched JadeStart in 2015 off the back of my passion for trying to give businesses the proper business education so that they could keep themselves out of insolvency. A lot of the times businesses end up in insolvency because they just don't understand simple things like numbers or strategies to help them through certain economic times. And so JadeStart was really that passion to sort of help as many people stay out of that space as possible. How we ended up in the beauty industry was most of my clients started off in the beauty space. And after a while of working with all different types of creative minds, Aaron and I, my husband and I, he is also in the business with me, we decided to niche down into the beauty industry because that's where we felt we were able to provide the biggest impact, because they really lacked that structure. They really lacked that financial acumen. They really lacked that understanding of how to keep themselves safe. A lot of businesses do, but we really enjoyed working in that space with those clients. So we decided to dedicate ourselves to that industry. And yeah, we've been doing it for 9 years now. And my husband's sort of the yin to my yang. He's got the opposite strengths to me. And so together we're able to really cover off on all areas of business, which is super fun.
What a series of events that brought you to where you are today. I'm sure that it came with its challenges, its successes, and made you the incredible leader you are today.
Yeah, it definitely came with a lot of challenges, that's for sure. I tell you what, studying law full-time while working full-time and running a business, I think of like my time now and I'm like, did I bend time somehow back then? I have no idea how I was able to make that happen, but I did for a number of years. So it was pretty crazy. But yeah, it definitely came with its challenges.
For anyone listening right now, if you're thinking, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time to go to the gym. I don't have enough time to go upskill. I don't have enough time to whatever it is. If you have it as a priority, just as Jade's done here, you're going to find the time and you're going to find a way to make it happen. And it just really comes back to that lesson or idea that if it's a priority for you, you'll find a way. And if you're struggling in business or you're not where you want to be, really check in with what your what your priorities are at the moment.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I feel really inspired after hearing that, because I know that you have 2 younger children as well, and navigating being a business coach, running your own company, and also having your own children, aka your coaching clients to manage. It sounds like a lot on, you were saying just before we started the episode, you had your first night of 7 hours sleep. Congratulations.
Yes, I did in like 5, well, actually Sienna's 8.5 months old now, but last time she gave me 7 hours was about 5 months ago. So I'm very excited.
Sleep deprived and she's still thriving. I'm here for it. So Jade, let's dive straight into the thick of it. I have some questions for you that have either come from listeners, people in Facebook groups, and obviously before we jump into all of these, we want to make sure that if you're listening to this, none of the advice or suggestions or things we're talking about on here are a personal attack at anyone. They are strictly to educate and raise more awareness around what's happening. So, if you have done some things that we're bringing up, maybe you didn't realize that it was something you shouldn't have done or that you needed to do, and there's nothing wrong with that. So just before we jump in, please just keep in mind that it's not here to make anyone feel bad or to, create some negative energy. It's really just to educate and empower more people on how they can put those protective measures in place. Yeah, Jade, do you have any other disclaimers?
Yes, you don't know what you don't know, to add on to that. But yes, no, this is not legal advice either. I'm not talking to anybody in their personal circumstances. I'm just here to educate. So if you are concerned about anything we discussed today, feel free to reach out and speak to either your insurance broker or your lawyers and get the specific legal advice to your circumstances.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jade. I am excited. So, one of the hot topics at the moment that has come up both on my social media page and in the industry is the difference between taking an accredited course versus a non-accredited certification. So, as you may know, there have been a lot of people jumping into training in the beauty industry and people who are also taking courses to get started in the beauty industry. What are some of the things that we need to be aware of when we are getting certified or offering trainings in the beauty industry?
Yeah, for sure. This one I'm really passionate about. The reason being is because if you are in the industry to better the industry, either provide more safety for your clients or to provide more education for your students or your members, then it's really important to think about them when you are developing your training course. So what I mean by that is, for sure, it's a great source of passive income and it's a great way to make extra money. However, please don't cut corners for the sake of making money. If it means that you need to spend a little bit more time being better researched or providing better information or, getting accredited or something like that, it's always going to be better for your clients and for your students because you're going to be able to provide the proper information. In terms of what's right and what's wrong, there is no real right or wrong in the beauty industry, and that's part of the problem. It's not regulated enough. So, if you offer a training course that's not certified, you can still do that. Just like if you want to offer a training course that is certified, you can do that as well. What personally I'd like to see happen in the industry is I'd love to see training courses become certified. The reason being is because you're teaching people how to apply chemicals on people's faces. You're teaching people how to do services that can have severe impacts in people's lives. Last night, Sam, you sent me a post of a woman who a lash tech had accidentally used lash glue instead of lash remover solution and glued a client's lashes together and had to surgically have her lashes removed in hospital. These kind of mistakes can happen and these kind of things can happen every day, whether it be just a lack of understanding or a lack of training. So my biggest piece of advice is that definitely if you want to see the industry improve and if you want to provide the highest possible safety for your clients, consider getting an RDO and becoming a qualified trainer and offering your training. I think it's only a matter of time before the industry catches up and becomes more regulated. And if you're already on the front foot with your trainings and you're already certified and qualified to provide training, when the industry does catch up, you're not going to have to scramble to get your qualifications and get certified to offer those training courses again. On top of that, because there's so many people becoming a trainer these days, and that's thanks to COVID, because COVID, forced people to shut their doors, the only way they could make an income was through online, and developing a product range took time and money because you had to invest in minimum order quantities. So a lot of people just turned to training courses. And because as soon as you launch a training course, you're competing with the world. You're no longer competing with your geographical location. So because you are competing with the world, having a point of difference and standing out from the competition is really important as well. So, if you want to stand out from all the other courses that are online, being certified and qualified is going to help give you that point of difference from others who are also offering courses. So they're my thoughts on it. I definitely feel like, if you don't have your qualifications and certifications, I'm not, criticizing you or anything like that. I'm just saying it would be a really good idea to consider getting them, especially before regulation catches up and requires people to have it, because we should be in it to better the industry and we should be in it to keep our clients safe, and their safety and correct information is really important. From an insurance perspective, you can be insured by most insurers either way. It just comes down to, I suppose, whether you want to have that point of difference and try and improve the industry for the better.
Super insightful. I love that. Just to add on to the insurance side of things, I actually called up 5 insurance agencies and 3 of them were unable to answer the question. One was able to answer, and then the other one had kind of a grey area. And the reality is I can go insure my business, but if I lodge a claim and I don't have the accredited certification, some insurance companies may actually reject that. Because who's to say that, hey, I just jumped online, I did a waxing course or I did a lash course, I watched it on YouTube, now I'm offering this. Okay, now I've been doing this for so long, I'm going to become a trainer myself. And the thing is, with online information, especially in today's day and age, like Gen Z, all these people, I saw it on TikTok. Oh, wow, it must be true then. Like, do your research.
Yeah.
I think in today's world, there's so much information out there, and you've got a lot of people who are all making these claims, but they don't necessarily do their research and have either the statistics, understand the chemical breakdowns of things, you know, and that's not to say you can't understand that if you're not a doctor or a lawyer or whatever it is, but where are you getting your information from? Are you getting it from a Facebook forum? Or are you getting it from a professional or credible resource?
Yeah. On that point, I'll just add, so the trends that we see a lot on social media, you know, if you are teaching people in courses how to do particular trends you're seeing on social media, because a trend is hot, you want to jump in and try and get some course sales, be very careful, because from an insurance perspective, as you've just mentioned, when we start mixing certain chemical compounds that aren't meant to be mixed together, we can void insurance. So, or we could have the wrong classification of insurance. So with insurance, if you are rebottling things, if you are importing things from overseas, you are classified as a manufacturer. And if you're not disclosing to your insurance company what the products are that you are using and how you're dealing with those products, of course, you can get insurance, but when it comes to lodging a claim, you may not be covered. And so, as you just mentioned before, so if you're teaching people, like I'll use an example because this is something that sort of a lot of people will remember, is there was this trend of mixing glitter with foam when you're doing people's brows, and it was all for the TikTok videos or the Instagram videos. Glitter is not meant to be mixed with foam. The two have very different chemical compounds. And when you mix those two together, it creates a new chemical compound that's not meant to be applied to the brow area and can risk causing harm to the skin. And so when it comes to mixing things like that and then teaching people how to do those kinds of things in your videos, even showing people how to do it online on social media can be classified as education. And so if you're teaching people how to do this stuff on your TikTok or on your Instagram and you're not covered under professional indemnity insurance and you don't have the backing of an insurer to say, yes, if you lodge a claim, we will cover you. If someone was to sue you for teaching them how to do it on social media, then you can find yourself in a lot of hot water.
I think that's a really good point to make. It's so easy to get caught up in trends and thinking that this is the way to go, and some of them do last for a long time. For example, brow lamination, that was a trend and that actually has become quite popular, but then we've seen other trends kind of get this huge amount of hype and then they die out within a month or two. And one of the ones that I've been seeing online a lot is the UV lights for lash extensions. And coming from a health science background, I am absolutely appalled that this is something that lash techs and companies are actually trying to endorse, saying that, you know, it's safe, they've got a low exposure rate. And if you actually look at some of the studies around using UV lights with even nails, people getting their nails done, it has been shown to have a carcinogenic effect. So
it alters your DNA.
Exactly.
It alters your DNA. And so if you're getting...
Why would you want that near your eyeball? I'm sorry, people. I am so passionate about this. Like, no, do not say that. And if you're sharing that on your stories and being like, I'm offering this, I'd be asking as a lash tech, why do you need a UV light? If your retention sucks, maybe you need to go do some upskilling or training. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just like, what kind of Band-Aid are you expecting out of this?
Be very careful getting onto things from Alibaba and trends out of China, because their regulations are very different to ours. And you, like I said, if you're not disclosing to your insurance company, hey, we're going to start using UV lights on our clients' lashes. And I bet you, like a lot of people who find these trends don't make the call to their insurer first to find out, would I be covered if I introduce this? They just jump on and do it. Then, you know, if you're that type of person that sees something coming out of China and you're like, amazing, I'm going to jump on this, please stop before you do and just call your insurer, do your research and find out whether it's actually going to be something that could be putting you at risk. Because it's not an issue till it's an issue. And when it's an issue, especially if you're a sole trader, you could end up bankrupt. And so your legal structure could not protect you in certain situations. Even if you're a company, if you're breaching regulations and breaching law, you could still be personally liable. So, if you want to have a house in the next 5 years, or if you've got a house, if you want to travel overseas, all of these things could be impacted through silly decisions that you make every day.
So Jade, let's say that I've become a trainer and I've decided, you know what, I don't want to buy from local supply companies because I found out I can order it from overseas and I'm going to save some money. I can sell it to all my students and make a nice profit. What kind of considerations do I realistically need to be looking into around insurance, ordering things in? Like, how could this actually impact my business without me having any clue?
Yeah. So a couple of things. First is your legal structure. If you're a sole trader, you are personally liable for everything that the business does because you are the business. There's no segregation legally between you and the business. The tax file number is attached to you. The ABN number is attached to you. You're the business. When you're a company, there's at least a shield between you and the business because the company is a separate legal entity. Think of it like a different child that's being born. Like it's got its own birth certificate, it's got its own tax file number, it's got everything. So there's at least a bit of protection for you or a bit of a shield. So your legal structure is really important to consider when it comes to doing any kind of business venture where there's risk. And when you go and see an accountant, they'll often tell you to do it as a sole trader because there's less tax implications. But tax is one consideration, legal risk is another. If you are operating a business which carries legal risk, then you might want to get legal advice about what the best structure is for you, whether it be a company, a trust, or something like that. The other thing to consider is insurance. So if you are importing products from overseas, you are classified as a manufacturer because if someone was to sue you for those products causing harm or whatnot, they're not going to sue the overseas company. They're going to sue the first point of contact in Australia. So the person who imported those products from overseas is classified as the manufacturer in Australia. So if you supply it to another beauty business and then that beauty business on-sells it to another beauty business, and then that beauty business uses it on a client and the client sues the beauty business that used the product on them, well, that beauty business can sue you as the point of contact coming into Australia. So it's really important to have the right level of public liability insurance in place for the products that you're distributing and selling. The other thing to keep in mind too is are any of the products that you're importing products which won't be insured? There are a lot of products which carry risks from a claim basis. So maybe potential products that you're selling have had cases against them in the past. And so insurance companies don't like to insure those particular products because the risk is a lot higher for them of it causing harm or detriment. Or maybe there's just not enough studies around it and they just don't like the risk because there isn't enough studies around it. So before you go and import stuff from overseas, have a conversation with your insurance broker and say, I'm thinking about getting these products in. Would you cover me if I got these products in? And it's really important to keep your insurance broker up to date with the products that you are using in your training space or in your salon, clinic or spa. So that way they can, if you ever go to lodge a claim, they can say, well, you have notified us that you're using that and we have told you that we will cover you for that. So your claim won't be rejected. You've got to think of insurance claims like you're trying to ask them to pay out money. They're going to find any way they can to not pay that money out. So you've got to protect yourself as best as possible and make sure that you're not giving them a loophole to get out of when you absolutely need it. The other thing to consider too is when it comes to the products that you're importing, are you classifying those products correctly and I say this from an accounting perspective because this is a really common mistake I see a lot of people make. Are you classifying those products correctly on your chart of accounts? So when people are importing those products, if they're themselves registered for GST, they'll put it under a code that says purchases, which includes GST, and they claim the GST on those products as credits. And they shouldn't be because offshore purchases are not part of our tax system. So you can't actually claim GST from those suppliers. And a lot of people have to back pay that GST when an accountant picks up on that. And so that can end up with tens of thousands of dollars worth of tax bills that you weren't expecting. So that's something else to keep in mind as well. I know that's Not really. Well, it is legalities because it's taxes, but it's a little bit different. And then in
Still
terms
super
of,
relevant.
yeah, super relevant. And then in terms of your representations, so just be really careful what you're representing about that product. So in Australia, we have consumer laws, and those consumer laws are in place to protect consumers from misleading and deceptive conduct or false information, which they then rely upon in their business when using those products or selling those products. So don't make claims that you don't know are founded or aren't true. Do your own research. Be very mindful that, what you're saying, someone else is relying upon to treat their clients. So if you yourself aren't 100% sure that the facts that you're being told from your manufacturer are correct, then do some extra research. For example, those UV lights, they're saying, the manufacturer probably says they're not harmful. They emit such low frequency that they're not going to burn the skin. What research is being done on that to confirm that it's even correct? Can your manufacturer show you the research that they've done, or are they just making a claim because their laws over there aren't going to, are you going to go sue someone in China because they made a false representation? You'd have to take out legal advice in China and follow their laws and sue them over there, which is incredibly expensive and difficult to do. So they know that, and they don't care about that. So they will make whatever representations they need to make in often cases to be able to get a sale, knowing that, that there's a 1 in a billion chance that they're going to get sued. And so they'll just bankroll it and take the risk. So you've got to be really, really careful that, you're actually, the information you're supplying to your students and your clients is correct, because there's a higher chance you could get sued for that misrepresentation or false information.
So many different things to consider there, and I'm really grateful that you were able to share those different insights or things that you need to take into account when you are selling a product, because like I'm saying, people are jumping into training, people are jumping into selling products. They're trying to find any other way to make money if they're not currently making that in their salon. One of the questions that came to mind as you were saying all of this is, what kind of outcome could happen? Let's say you're a lash trainer, you didn't have a accredited course, but you sold me that course. I actually had no idea that there's a difference between accredited versus non-accredited. I'm working on a client. Let's say something goes wrong. I give her a chemical burn or something like that. And then I actually go back to you and say, well, hey, I didn't actually have the proper training to be able to deal with this because my client's suing me. Now I'm suing you. What happens in that situation?
Yeah. So what happens is it's usually just through insurance companies. So you would lodge a claim through your public liability insurer just because your client is suing you. Your public liability insurer will say, well, what training did you have? And you'll provide that training. And then your public liability insurer will sue the trainer's public liability professional indemnity insurance. Their professional indemnity insurance will either cover them or not cover them, depending on the disclosures that they made when they took out their insurance policy. If their insurer decides that they're not going to cover them and they're going to decline the policy, well, then you're suing the trainer personally. And when you're suing the trainer personally, they may not have any money. If they have no money, it just sends them bankrupt. That's it. You can't get blood out of a stone. So what happens then is you don't get any money out of the trainer to cover your insurance. And if your insurer decides to reject your claim because you didn't have the appropriate level of training, well, then it goes back to your client suing you personally, and you could end up losing everything. That's worst case scenario. Best case scenario, your insurer files a claim against your trainer's professional indemnity insurance. Professional indemnity insurance stands up and pays out your insurer, and your insurer pays out your client's claim. So that's the best case scenario, when everything's upheld and all the proper disclosures have been made and everything's approved. But obviously that's a pretty big ask, and you've got to overcome a lot of hurdles to make that happen. So if you haven't got the right legal structures in place and if you haven't made the right disclosures, then you could stand to lose everything.
Just taking a moment to process all of that.
And
because it is a lot.
People don't think about, because they just think, I'm just going to lash because I love lashing, or because I have a passion for it. The passion's great, but you need to make sure you're protected in the same breath. You don't want to, especially if you're a mum with young kids or you're planning on having a family, you don't want to have to risk losing the family home or losing all of your savings. If you go, and to put it into context, if you go bankrupt, you're not allowed to own a car that's worth over a certain value. I think it's $7,000 or something like that. You're not allowed to have any personal assets worth over a certain value. You're not allowed to travel overseas. You have your passport taken away from you. You're not allowed to earn any more than a certain amount per year. And if you do, that amount gets taken off you and paid to creditors who are owed money. It's a really harsh process. You have to check in with a bankruptcy trustee regularly around your finances. It's a really harsh process, and you don't want to be going through that, especially if you're in your prime with a young family or thinking about having a family, or when you've got a relationship, or even thinking about getting into one. You want to try and avoid that as much as possible.
Definitely agree with you there. So another thing that I find myself coming across on social media and online, and I'm sure you do too with your own coaching clients, is people using the exact same names, whether that's business names, whether that's copying word for word content. I've actually had it happen to me. Someone has copied word for word my lead generation posts and used them in their businesses and things like that. And obviously you get frustrated and you think, oh, what can I actually do here? And then I guess for many people who don't actually know how to deal with it, they end up just letting it go because it ends up costing so much in legal fees just to, I guess, try resolve the one thing. And then it's like all that effort you went to and money you spent, was it really worth it? So before we get to that horrible part where you're like, oh, my life's falling apart, what do? I'm really angry right now because all of this has happened. What protective measures can you put in place to avoid these things happening or minimize the effects?
Yeah, definitely. This is a really good question. So there's lots of different IP laws in existence in Australia and internationally. There's copyright law. Copyright law, you don't need to do anything. It just exists as soon as you publish something in the public domain. So as soon as you put a post up on social media, you immediately have copyright over the text in that post as well as the graphics that get published. And if somebody is infringing your copyright and they don't alter it or edit it enough for it to not be considered the same, which I know a lot of people throw around that 10% rule. There's lots of different, rulings and case law around what is substantial and what's not substantial. But, if they're not editing it, if they're copying it word for word, well, they're breaching your copyright, which exists automatically. And you can send them a cease and desist letter and ask them to remove it. And that shouldn't cost, once you get a cease and desist letter template, it shouldn't cost you anything to send that out whenever you need to. The other type of legal protection that there is around intellectual property is trademarks. So with trademarks, you do need to make a registration for this. And in Australia, you make that registration with IP Australia, but overseas, you need to make it with their relevant trademark offices. And just to loop back to the product point that we were talking about before, if you're importing products from overseas, well, you'll want to have trademarks over your logo and your branding in the country that you are manufacturing in, because if you don't and someone else files those trademarks, aka your manufacturer, over the top of you, they could end up charging you a license fee to put your logo and branding on the products that you're manufacturing out of their country. And so having IP protection around your branding is really important. Now, I just want to distinguish between trademark and a registered business name with ASIC. They are not the same. When you register a business name with ASIC, what you're basically doing, so there's laws in Australia that says if you are not operating under the same legal entity as your business name, so for example, we're JadeStart, Pty Ltd. We operate as JadeStart. So, we don't need to have a registered business name with ASIC, even though we do. If we were to be JadeStart, Pty Ltd. Trading as aesthetic and beauty business coaches, well, then we need to register a business name with ASIC. And the reason being is because if someone's entering into a legal agreement with you, they need to understand who is the legal entity running that business, because that's the entity they enter into a legal agreement with, not the trading name, not the shopfront name. So we have to register a name with ASIC to put people on notice who the legal entity is that's operating that business. It does not afford you any intellectual property rights whatsoever. And so if you are setting up a business down the road from another business and you choose to have the exact same name, well, unfortunately, ASIC's not going to do anything about it because there's no intellectual property rights. But having a trademark is intellectual property rights, which will protect you from somebody else having the same name or a name that's substantially similar. And the same goes with logos and, interestingly, with scents, with smells. So if you were to develop your own unique smell for your salon, spa or clinic, and a signature smell, and you registered that as a trademark, then nobody else could have the same or substantially similar smell in their salon, clinic or spa without infringing your trademark. So trademark protection is definitely worth it. It lasts for 10 years and then you just renew it. So it could last for infinity. As long as you keep renewing that trademark, you have that protection. With copyright, it doesn't last forever. It lasts for, I think it's at the moment, 70 years past the death of the person who originated the copyright. It keeps getting extended because Walt Disney has died and Mickey Mouse is due to expire in copyright, and they keep going to the international courts and getting the definition extended so that they can keep having IP over Mickey Mouse.
I keep seeing that pop up everywhere. Even Cadbury, they have trademarked that exact shade of purple. No one else can use that.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's lots of different protection you can have with trademarks, and it's really like it's slogans and sayings. You can trademark slogans and sayings so that nobody else can use them. Something that's a little bit tricky that a lot of people don't realize with trademarks is there's different classes and categories for trademarks. And if you are using a term in a particular class, for example, class 44, which is beauty services, but somebody else holds a trademark for that term in class 3, which is beauty products, you may not be allowed to actually file or have your trademark because the person who has it in class 3, it's called a cross-class trademark, they have the originating right to file it in class 44. It gets quite complicated and tricky, but what I want to suggest is with trademarking, it's better to file and get your rights protected before or even as soon as you start using it. So that way you know that you've got that protection in place, and that if anybody else was to try and have something substantially similar around your branding, your logo, your color scheme, your name, your signature smell, whatever it might be, your slogan, then you have rights to be able to stop them. And you have to police and monitor your trademarks. So you have to send cease and desist letters to anybody who is using your trademark. I had a client who received a cease and desist letter for using the term lash Botox because Allergan hold the trademark for Botox in class 44 and class 3, which are beauty services and products, and they hold it for the term beauty services and hair care products. So it's not like they could even argue that they didn't have that description trademark. They did. So lash Botox is actually a protected trademark that you can't even use. And so having, they have to protect their trademark, and so they send cease and desist letters out to anybody who's using it. So that's another consideration with IP. The other type of IP you can have is patents or registered designs. So if you're developing a unique product and maybe the bottle or the packaging is quite unique and is going to be your signature style around the packaging, it's going to be your point of difference in the marketplace. Maybe the product's the same, but the packaging is extremely different or unique. You might want to register a design for that. But with registered designs, you have to register it before it gets out in the public domain. As soon as it's released into the public domain, you no longer have the right to protect that registered design. So unlike trademarks where you can use the trademark term before you actually file for registration, you can't with registered designs. You've got to think ahead and protect your registered design first. And same with patents. You can't, unfortunately, patent or do a registered design over a training course. It doesn't work that way. With a training course, you do have copyright laws in place, and you can trademark certain terms that you're using in your training course or slogans or names and things like that. You definitely can register those, but you can't, if someone wants to copy your course and alter it, slightly, they can because of copyright laws. It only protects you if it's the same or substantially similar. As long as they alter it, and it no longer is considered, breach of copyright, then they can do that. So that's a common question I get asked all the time is, can I protect my training course? Well, you can to a certain degree, but not entirely. Same with business ideas. You can't trademark a business idea or protect a business idea.
So right now, everyone's listening to this and going, oh, maybe I should look at trademarking my business if it is something that I see myself doing in the next 5, 10, 20 years. What's the average cost of a trademark?
So it depends if you do it yourself or if you go through a trademark specialist. So if you do it yourself, IP Australia have self-lodging portals where you can either use a pick list and you can pick all the descriptive terms that you want to trademark in the class, or you can do a non-pick list option, which means you can put in the descriptions yourself. It can cost up to around $400, I think, from memory, to file a trademark with IP Australia per application, per class. So if you've got class 3 for products and class 44 for beauty services, then that's 2 applications. So you pay 2 lots of $400. Unfortunately, they don't do discounts for bundling. It's just a 1 fee per application. If you were to use an IP lawyer, which I actually would recommend because there's a lot of nuances when it comes to filing trademarks and filing them well, you can fumble your way through it, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be protected adequately. And there's lots of different little nuances around the descriptives you should use, how descriptive you should get, making sure that you've done enough searches, because you don't want to burn that $400 or $800 because you file it and then you find out that you didn't do proper searches and you can't actually proceed with your application. Or you get an examination letter and they say, well, here's the rebuttals that we have, and then you've got to try and overcome those and you have no idea what they're saying or what it all means. So there's quite a bit involved in trademarking. So I do recommend using somebody. But if you were to use somebody, you could be looking at sort of upwards from $700 up per application, depending on how much they include in that service. So do they include searches? Do they include responding to IP Australia's examination reports if they send them? There's lots that you'll need to get clarification around.
And I think that comes down to how serious are you about your business and what you're protecting, because if you are taking this seriously and you do want to protect everything you've worked towards or you are working towards, you can try cut corners and you can try do it the cheaper way, but it will either take longer, you'll make unnecessary mistakes, maybe lose some money, maybe lose some time, or you might end up paying the price long term. And I was talking to Jade about this before we planned to do this episode. Right now, I'm doing a public interest assessment to apply for a liquor license with one of the businesses that I own. And to get a lawyer to do it is $25,000, which is a substantial amount. And I have gone and been doing my research and going and doing the public interest assessment. That side I can do, but I can tell you right now, if I had someone like Jade that I could go, yep, can you please do this? I know she'd have her due diligence. She knows all the little tips and tricks, what's going to get things over the line versus what kind of terminology you need to use. Like, there's so many benefits to paying the experts. And I think when it comes to business, the businesses that do the best pay, I guess, the money up front so that they can get access to either the experts or the knowledge or the protective measures in place before the bad thing happens. And so whether you're thinking about, hey, I'll just let it run, I won't worry about insurance, hey, I don't need a lawyer, like whatever happens, sure, you can have that mindset, but just know that sometimes there is a price that you will pay later on. And you can either pay it up front or you can pay it afterwards.
Yeah. And I will add to that. So I've had a lot of clients before becoming clients of ours have gone down the path of rebranding and have announced their rebranded name and then not done their searches or due diligence properly and found that they're infringing on someone's trademarking, and they've had to go through the whole rebranding process again. And that's cost them a lot more than what a trademark would have if they had just filed a trademark and figured that out right from the very beginning. So it happens more often than it doesn't, and it's very common. And with trademarking and protecting your business name, it lasts 10 years for the price that you pay before you have to renew it again. So that's, if you divide that cost over 10 years, that's nothing compared to what it would cost if you had to rebrand a few times over that period of time, So, and also, I don't, just in case anyone was like, oh, great, I'll reach out to Jade. I don't do trademarking or liquor license applications. I have done plenty of them, but no, not at the moment.
She knows how much of a headache they are. She's like, I'm not doing this, not by choice. You couldn't pay her to do another one, honestly. They're painful.
You're sort of like, oh, this is not an area of law I find super fun to do every day.
It's actually wild. Like, I was thinking about it as well, because if you are a beauty salon and you wanted to add in a mini bar or cocktails or something like that, sure, you could do it dodgily. But if you wanted to actually do the right thing, there's a lot of effort that goes into it. And I don't think people realize renewing a liquor license or changing it if it's already been accepted, it still has its challenges, but it's a lot easier. Trying to do one from scratch is really hard. And you've got to look at the at-risk populations and look at how you're going to have your safety management plan and all of these other things. It's like law upon law upon law. And do you know what gets me wild, Jade? There's so many headaches and so many laws and regulations that I'm pulling my hair out here, but there's nothing in the beauty industry.
Yeah.
How does one industry have so many things? And it's just like, yeah, it's sure, funny. I get it. Alcohol is a drug and it can, cause substantial harm to the community. But also, so is making people go blind. So is burning people. So is, giving out misinformation because you saw it on TikTok. So if we look at the beauty industry. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I was going to say it's coming. The TJ and APRA are really cracking down in the cosmetic space at the moment. It's only a matter of time before. I know they have no reach into beauty entirely, but it's only a matter of time before they change some laws, and they do. So it is coming. I do firmly believe we're going to see a very different set of regulations in the next 5 to 10 years for sure.
And the greater impact of that on you as someone who is a beauty business owner is, hey, if my staff don't have an accredited certification, if I don't have an accredited certification, if I've been a trainer and I've trained thousands of students and not had an accredited certification, and all of a sudden now you require one, not only do you need to go and resit your training and get an accredited certification, but it's also all the people that you've trained under you that need to do that too. Yeah. So when I think about accreditations, I want to make it really clear that sometimes I get it. TAFE is a little bit outdated with what they're teaching. It's not like they're teaching you all the innovative and new techniques, products, things that have come into the industry. Like, I get it. The industry is outdated in some ways. But what I do believe would really benefit everyone in the industry, people who are coming into the industry, people who are already in the industry, and clients in the industry, is actually having some kind of standard where everyone's upholding themselves to. So you have to understand how to provide a great service, all of the safety and health implications and considerations, knowing when to refer. So if you're not an expert at what you do or you don't understand something, refer people to that right person. Don't give out information if it's not your area of expertise. When I was at uni, for us to treat clients, we had to go through professional health practices. So understanding how to make clients feel comfortable and do everything ethically. Like if someone's getting undressed or they're exposing part of their body to you, how do you drape them effectively and make sure that that's a comfortable situation for them? You're putting people in rooms just offering a service, but not giving them all this background knowledge on things like safety, infection, hygiene, all of these things, which actually leads me into another thing. We sit here and go, oh, it's so annoying. It's so many rules. But at the same time, look at what not having rules has done to the industry. People don't take beauty as seriously as it should be. It's just people at home who's bought some stuff online and now providing services. And when people want to charge the right amount, when they want to invest in upskilling and training, they don't have the funds to be able to do that, or they aren't valued by the general population of the professionalism of what they're doing.
I think it's going to have massive, profound impacts positively for the industry. It's going to help you charge more. It's going to help you have more confidence and trust with your clients. It's going to help the industry have a higher regard amongst its, fellow peers who are higher up in the industry. It's going to, help provide a lot more in terms of the services that get released and provided to clients. It's going to help provide a lot more innovation in the space as well. It's going to have so many positive impacts by having tighter regulations in the industry. I think there's nothing but excitement around, having regulations brought in.
I agree. And I think as well, if you're doing the right thing, you'll just go do that. If there is something that you need to do and you're passionate about what you do, maybe it will be annoying, but at the same time, you're still going to put your hand up and say, yes, all right, I care about the beauty industry. I care about the health and safety of my clients. I'm going to do it. When COVID happened and we had to do all the food and health safety control and make sure we were disinfecting everything, yeah, a little bit annoying, but look at the bigger picture. Is that one thing that maybe feels like an inconvenience or annoyance for you? Why are you making this about you? What about your clients? What about the industry as a whole? How can we all work together to make this a more collaborative and empowering space?
100%.
So another thing that I've found that I guess frustrates some of my clients is that they're going and doing all the right things, you know? They are registering their business. They are putting money aside for tax and GST. And then you've got other people who are operating out of home without council approval, and they're taking cash under the books and charging cheap prices because they don't really have many overheads. I guess it's kind of that awkward thing, because if you don't know you need to do that, or you've been avoiding and not doing it, what happens if someone dobs you in? Or what happens if you've been running your business for so long and then one day you decide, I actually want to go get this approval, and you've been doing it the whole time? Like, what kind of things do you need to consider with that?
The answer to that question really comes down to the fact that you've left yourself exposed and at risk. And if you've been caught, so for example, if someone's dubbed you in and investigations have been made against you and they've found that you didn't have proper licenses or whatnot, you could have fines issued to you by local councils and by governing bodies. You could have insurance claims lodged against you by people who've been affected. Class actions could come into play if you've impacted a lot of people with training courses. And if you have, obviously, if you've been breaching the law, there's no insurance in place. So then it would be a matter of, you'd be personally liable for these costs and these claims. So there could be some pretty detrimental impacts, which could, change your life for a period of time while you're going through this process, years. So it's definitely not recommended to do it. If you decide, or you haven't been caught out, and if you decide, I've been doing it wrong for some time and now I want to do it right, it's just a matter of going and getting your licenses, going and changing your processes to make sure that they're compliant, get the proper insurances, that kind of stuff, and move forward.
Super valuable. I think that a lot of people listening to this episode would have so much knowledge now around what they need to consider in their business and maybe what some of the next steps are moving forward. I've really, really enjoyed having you on. Any key pieces of information or advice that you'd love the listeners to walk away with from this episode?
So my biggest piece of advice is do things properly. Don't cut corners. Make sure that you are protecting yourself and your clients legally and also from a safety perspective. Make sure that you do your research, you do diligence, and take your time to do things properly. Sure, it might cost you more, it might take more time, but that's an investment you make up front that's not going to come and bite you on the bum later on down the track. So it's definitely worth doing things properly. At the same time, I don't want that to stifle your innovation or stifle your motivation or passion. That's not the purpose of it. But you need to be able to sleep well at night, and sleep well at night knowing that something that you're doing is not going to have a risk of coming back and hurting you or your clients down the track. We all should be in the industry to try and improve it and make it safe and a better space for our clients. So try and think about how you can do that with your business by taking the right steps to mitigate risk and to protect your business and yourself and your clients properly.
Very powerful. I really appreciate the time you've taken to jump on today, as I'm sure all the listeners have. Where can they find and connect with you if they want to reach out, maybe ask some questions or find more about what it is you do and how you help them?
Yeah, for sure. So we share a lot of free education on our platform on on Instagram. So it's at JadeStart _ JADESTART _. We've got lots of Instagram lives we've done, our posts that we do. The captions are really informative and educational. So definitely head over there and check out that. We had a client once tell us that he spent 6 hours binge watching everything that we had on there one weekend. So there's a lot of content there that you can definitely binge watch if that's what you want to do. But if you've got any questions, feel free to just send us a message on Instagram as well. Always super active on there. And happy to answer any questions. There's no silly questions.
Jade is super approachable. Like when I sent her a message, I was like, how's she going to respond? And she was so kind. We jumped on a call. We got along really well. And now one of my friends has signed up to her program, and I'm so excited to see where it takes them. So if you're ever scared of reaching out to someone else who's in the same space, is another business owner or offering the same services, like, don't be scared. If you guys are going to get along, you're going to get along. If they don't want to hear from you, then that has more to say about them than it does for you. And I want to bring this up because we are going to get along so much better as an industry if we start building relationships and connecting with other people, because a lot of the time you probably will find you have some aligned values or beliefs, and when we come together, we can make a greater impact. And I hope that this podcast episode can really inspire you to start doing that in your business more.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
If you found value in what we've spoken about today, please take a screenshot of this episode and share it to your story. You can tag at JadeStart_. You can tag at Beauty Industry Leaders and Sammy Kennedy Coach if you're feeling it. But we'd love to hear your feedback, and we may be doing a second episode on potential fit outs. So if that's something that you want to hear about, send us your questions and we will hopefully be able to answer them in another episode. Other than that, I will see you next week for Monday.
Audience exclusive.